Welcome to the Accounting Arc Podcast, where analysis, reaction, and comedy collide to tackle the big topics from the world of accounting and beyond. Join our trio of transformation agents as they discuss the hottest topics in and out of the profession, from breaking down industry trends, to reacting to everyday events, to uncovering the hidden humor in numbers. With wisdom, insight, and a dash of levity, they're proving that accounting isn't just about the numbers. It's about life. Because after all, accounting is in everything. The Accounting Arc Podcast starts now.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Accounting Arc. And it has been a while since we've been together. All three of us have been traveling a bunch, doing a bunch of conferences. And so sorry for the break, but we are back. And all of us, I think, are quite tired after a lot of this. Not as tired as Liz, though. Liz just had some flight disasters, it sounds like. But what we thought we'd do today is kind of really kind of recap what all of us kind of saw in the conferences or heard or thought or are thinking as a reaction to what we saw in the conferences. So either of you want to kick us off?
Oh, that's super fun. Yeah, I'll jump in. In June, of course, was when things really kicked off for me, and I had two weeks back to back of conferences. Before AI-CPA Engage, where Donny and I we got to spend some time together, was Karbon Next in San Diego. The week-long customer conference for Karbon, my first customer conference since joining Karbon. And I tell you, it was special. I throughout most of my career, I haven't done a lot of vendor specific conferences. It's always been like, associations or things like that. And I always kind of had this perception that like just vendor conferences were not as rich as some of the other conferences. And I don't know if it was unique to Karbon Next or not, but it was really amazing. All the firms who were there are heavily invested in their firm and wanting to be successful in what they are doing for their clients. And it was a really energizing conference to kick off 2 weeks of travel, just being around so many firms who were just deeply engaged in what's happening in the profession, deeply engaged in the technology that is hitting us from all sides. Like I can remember years ago saying it was the Wild West, like when SaaS started kicking off. And I feel like it's truly the Wild West right now with just the AI explosion. So for that conference, it really just kind of re-energized just my level of belief in this profession and in the firms and what they are doing. Made a lot of incredible contacts, had a lot of fun, did some AI presentations there that were all like really well received. Plus it was in San Diego. So I like what's not to love about, being in just a perfect climate, going out on a boat a little bit here and there and spending some time together with really good people. So that was a really great way to kind of kick off conferences for me this year.
Really sad you didn't invite me out on a boat. That sounds fun.
I wish you were there. I wish you were there. We'll make it happen another time. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So I find conferences mostly entertaining from the perspective of getting to see people, right? And like network with people, talk to people, ask deep questions and, build those relationships as well as kindle, relationships with people I already have. And the thing that I found most interesting this summer is that everybody's kind of sitting in this boat of anticipation around tech. and they don't know how to or when to get excited. And so it's this like weird mix of anticipation and trepidation that's like overtaking the profession in a way that I think is like actually kind of detrimental. And I worry because I think like holistically, we have a big knowledge gap with this next level of tech
Oh,
around
yeah.
how it works, what's safe, understanding like how tools are actually integrating this and like what that means, right? Like, are they just layering AI on top of code? Are they building it into the code? How is it affecting things? Where is client data going? There are all these unanswered questions. And part of that is because a lot of the vendors don't quite understand it either, right? So, like, who goes to these conferences? Most of the time, it's like salespeople, right? Marketing people, not people who sit there and build the tech on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, some companies will send their product leaders, and sometimes product leaders are very adept at this, but not all of them are, because there is already a significant knowledge gap on the tech side as well, and people are trying to catch up, and there's this whole other level of trepidation happening in that arena. And so I bring that up to say, like, the biggest takeaway I had was that everybody's kind of lost and not knowing exactly where to look or how to find this information or what the implications of it are, or what's going to happen in the next 6 months, 9 months, a year. And I have a lot of thoughts about what will happen and how it actually works and what the implications are, which of course leads me to ask really invasive questions of salespeople that have no idea what to say to me. But holistically, I love conferences and making people uncomfortable. And there were lots of awkward moments this year, so we'll continue that trajectory.
I like that. And we had our episode about why it's important to do stuff in person, and totally agree. That is the one thing. I'm glad I made time to do the conference, to do several conferences this year. I'm going to build real quick though and diverge from the conference team on what you just said, Liz, which is I've been involved with the IAASB expert group on Gen AI. And so this one is an interesting one because we just started meeting. We've had two meetings so far. We meet once a month. We've had two meetings so far, once in early June and once earlier this month. And what we have been talking about is the need for vendors to actually communicate use cases and use cases that they have actually tested their tech on. So I thought that was an interesting take because you kind of assume certain functionality, and the path that it seems like this is going to go down is effectively a SOC 2 focused on processing integrity, which we almost never, process integrity is pretty much a SOC 1 thing, and it's sort of assumed. And this one I think is going to be interesting to see whether whether it plays out this way. We'll know by the end of the year because we're drafting this guidance for the international level, which should be drafted by the end of this year. So I think that's when the exposure drafts are going to come out. But it's going to effectively say, hey, vendors, you need to provide firms with the information around what are the intended use cases, and what, have you actually tested for these use cases? And then firms have to then take that information in and go, is this how we're planning to use this? And does this affect, in this case, our audit quality? But to me, this type of thinking you could apply to almost any of the tax or CAS to go, okay, what did they test for? What were they intending us to use this for? And can I actually use it in that way? So that's kind of an interesting direction that I see accelerating, because I also talked to the AICPA about what they were doing, and they're progressing down. This is why I think it's a SOC 2. They're progressing down that guidance path as well.
Do you think firms will, generally speaking, be able to even consume that information? Like right now, I think, like SOC, you take SOC, if you ask 5 firms, I think you might get 1.5 that can like really tell you what SOC means from a vendor perspective. So I'm just curious, if you think what comes out of that, like firms will even be able to digest as like and apply to their decision making.
Well, I think that's the challenge. And so that's
Yeah.
one of the, so I'm actually on this task force as a representative of small and mid-sized firms to
Cool.
figure out whether it's written in a way and that whether they can actually, one, understand the guidance, and two, whether they have the capabilities to follow it. So that's kind of the mandate I was given. The rest of the firms are all large top 10 firms. There's a couple
Right.
of vendors that are in there too from the vendor side. And then there's some regulators and some of the like national associations. So it's kind of interesting to see this mix coming together. But very well taken. I'm not sure. And then that's where it makes me start to think like what additional information, or is there someone else that's going to kind of fill in that gap for them? Because part of the guidance is going to say, I believe it's going to say, hey, if your firm does not have the capability to understand this, you need a specialist. You need to contract with a specialist to have that on your team. And I went, ooh, there's a consulting opportunity there. Of course.
Yeah. And what kind of burden does that put on small firms?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it's being discussed because it is an issue, and it comes back to so much of kind of to Liz's point, the trust in the information that you are receiving. Because I mean, Liz is spot on generally. The people who are selling the products, they don't actually know and understand what it is. They understand the value pitch and the benefit pitch. But when it comes to, the practical application of these things and how it's going to impact the firm in short term and more importantly, the long term, I mean, I think that's what makes this Wild West just so scary to me, because I mean, firms are making real decisions, investing real resources, dollars, time, energy, effort, potentially putting data at risk in making these decisions. And we just, it's kind of like a new pill that just showed up on the market that hasn't had full testing. We don't know what the side effects are yet.
Yeah. Well, and it's a tall order to expect everybody to understand
Oh
it
yeah.
foundationally from a technological perspective, because like that is not something that even people in the tech sphere know at this point to the extent that they probably should. And so I think about a lot of the implications of that. And I think a lot about, what people are saying on the internet and how that's affecting people in real life. And so a lot of the questions I ask at conferences are, what do you think about this topic? Or, hey, did you see this article? And do you think that's viable and why? And here's all my criticisms of it, right? And that's, I mean, obviously, if you're listening here, I criticize everything with a fine tooth comb because that's how my brain works. But I think that it's really fascinating and thought provoking to have these conversations in real time at conferences. And I recently gave a presentation where I opened it and I said, okay, you would think if you just read my slide deck that I'm anti AI. The truth is, I'm extremely pro AI when you use it ethically, with a conservation mindset, with empathy, with, all of these safeguards and whatever. And the whole room was just laughing because they're like, yeah, we did look at your slide deck before you started presenting. And we're like, wait, we thought you were going to teach us how to do this. I'm like, I am, like, safely, ethically, with a conservation mindset, right? Like, how do we do this in a way that makes the most sense? And also, it is not the world that many people post online and say like, oh yeah, you can do all these things. Yes, you can do all those things, but also there are implications to all of those things that are not being discussed or understood foundationally. So I'm excited to see how that evolves over the next couple of years, and how the stuff you're talking about, Donnie, gets integrated in and people start understanding the awareness and the implications, and vendors start being, hopefully a bit more transparent about what this means on their side. And I do think that the future is bright and interesting and hopefully less administrative. And also, we'll see. Like, the cost of AI is proving to be more than the cost of human labor. So this will be
Completely.
this will be fun.
Completely agree. That's actually the number one presentation I'm getting asked to do this year is actually about AI governance, which ties into everything that you said, including the ethical, social impacts and environmental impacts. And I found the last couple of years, people weren't willing to listen to that. But now it seems like they're willing to listen. And I even just finished reviewing for a large international firm, AI governance policy, not just Gen AI, but overall AI governance policy. And I mentioned to them, hey, you're missing some things around, for example, ensuring that the AI aligns towards our profession, service to the public or duty to the public, and you're missing things on here that align it to your firm's values and also addressing risks of disinformation and all this stuff. And they went back and they revised a whole bunch of stuff to address all of that. And I went, you guys go. Because I think this aligns, and I'll tie it back into the conferences at Engage this year. The AICPA released its RISE 2040 report, which was the conglomeration of, I forget, thousands of, I think it's tens of thousands, actually, if I remember correctly, of people's input into what does the profession look like in 2040. And trust, which Byron mentioned earlier, is one of the key things. But it was, I think, also implied in there that we have to be this lens that looks at the bigger picture and identifies all of these other areas, which to me ties into ESG reporting and really looking at what are the environmental, what are the social, and how are you making these decisions in the right way and advising our clients to make these decisions in the right way.
Yeah. Well, I think it's difficult to project out that far. And also, my biggest takeaway from most of these conferences is why we do what we do hasn't changed. What we do hasn't really changed. How we do it is changing. And I think that if you categorize it with why are we here? Like, what do we do from a service perspective? And build the foundations around what we know and have always enjoyed doing, and then think about how do we actually deliver that service in a meaningful, timely, efficient way. That's the piece where we can analyze and think about integration of whatever new tech is going to get thrown at us, and then we can talk about quantum encryption.
Hell yeah, absolutely. Donny, I'm curious, have you played with the RISE Navigator yet from the RISE 2040 report?
I have not, but I've actually heard a couple of really good feedback about it, where people have tried and thrown stuff at it and actually got really good responses out of it.
That's cool. Yeah, I've been itching to play with it. So for anyone who doesn't know, if you're an AICPA member, you go to rise2040.com, and they've taken all of this research, all of the data that they've collected, and put it into this LLM, which allows you to prompt it, asking about insights, and kind of, it's better than the old school reports, where you would just get like a spreadsheet and you'd have to try to do your own analysis. You can go in there and actually have a conversation with the information, which seems really fascinating. So it's something I definitely have on my to-do list to check out.
Well, more than that, one of the persons I talked to, she actually took a firm's strategic plan, threw it against there, and had it tell her what were all the things that they're missing or maybe should consider in response to the data that was there. And she said it gave them really good points to think about.
Ooh, that's super cool. That's super powerful. And from what I understand, the plan is to keep this research going. So it wasn't just a research like at a point in time and it's frozen. It's going to continue to update. So, these resources aren't just going to be, time stamped as 2026 information, which is really exciting as well.
Well, that's how I would encourage people to utilize it. So what I already did, so I was on that advisory board, so I had kind of preview of the material, and I've used it already with my Hawaii Society of CPAs. And what I did was I shared, this is what RISE 2040 found. What's relevant to us locally by 2030? So I brought it in way closer, especially to address what Liz says, like it's way too far away. So let's make this real. And what should we as a profession be focused on, in the next 3 years, 3 or 4 years? And that I thought was very interesting. Basically, our locally, we validated everything was very relevant. They thought it was on point. But the two key things that they thought we should focus on in Hawaii is the understanding the tech. It wasn't just AI, but understanding the tech and proper governance. That was number one. And then number two, which I was actually kind of surprised, I have to be honest, because Hawaii's kind of pretty far behind everyone else right now in the conversations, maybe I should say in the shift, because the number two was the shift towards advisory, whether it was from a CFO internally advising the other execs or from a public accounting advising. And they were like, that was the shift. And then of course the power skills, what you used to call soft skills, I like to call them power skills now. Like that was the other thing. And I went, wow, this is interesting to see them say like, these are the things that we should be focusing on.
Nice. That's super cool. That's really cool. So transitioning back to Engage, did you have any other like big takeaways from Engage?
Mine was really, it was the affirmation on the governance. So I was actually speaking in the corporate finance track. And so I attended two of the other presentations, which came from CFOs who were at fairly larger organizations. One was actually I think he was actually the head of the controllers division. And then the other one was the lead for the AI Center of Excellence for their company. And both of them effectively brought up use cases, which we've already mentioned as well, and then governance, and those being the key things. So that really, to me, it's just been this theme that I keep hearing. And I actually just presented in Vancouver earlier last week,
cool.
actually. And same thing there, where I was talking about IT strategy and the need to incorporate proper governance, and that it wasn't about the tech, as Liz kind of indicated, it's not about the tech. It's about what we do with the tech. And then I gave kind of three things. One was, automation, which we all talk about, but two, thinking about staff and your employee, what today we call employee experience and how that's making that better. And then also risk management from a general standpoint of how are we actually leveraging not AI to AI risk, but managing the risk within our firms or organizations and using analytics and potentially AI to help inform that some more, which in the end leads towards the impact that we're having on our clients. How are we helping our clients be more successful? And out of like 100 people that was maybe in attendance there, I swear like 15 or 20 of them came up to me over the course of the day and was like, thank you so much. And it ties back to, I think, Liz's whole comment around the purpose and why we do what we do hasn't changed. And when we can connect people back into that purpose, that's really what strengthens and rejuvenizes our profession. I think in accounting that we too often forget that we have to put our own mask on first, like in an airplane, right? Put our own mask on first before we help others. And our whole thing is, oh, there's clients, I gotta help the clients, I gotta do all this stuff. And we're giving so much of ourselves that we're not taking that time to take care of ourselves. It's part of the reason why at the center, we created this whole personal resilience program, which is really, for you to be that strong rock and foundation for the clients, you need to be solid yourself first. So it really is a matter of taking care of ourselves, and then we can take care of others. In fact, we can take care of more others, the stronger that we are as a foundation. And that's also why a lot of what we do is based in teams, because then even if you're faltering, some of the teammates can jump in to cover or to allow you the time to rest so that you can rest, but we're still holding everybody up. So that's why I think working together in a team is so important, as well as taking care of yourself.
It's a very succinct way to say that, and I appreciate it. And I also I am very excited for where our profession goes from here and how we're able to do that. Some of the stuff we're building and able to do right now will just enhance the profession in such a meaningful way that it's like, could you imagine when you started your career having access to this level of tech and support and knowledge and what that would have done? Trajectory would have been completely different. Timelines to learn this stuff would have been different. Support and understanding and all the things that historically have given us anxiety is, knowledge gaps or having to spend a ridiculous amount of time to find information about stuff. And research now is so much easier and faster and more efficient. And anyways, I think about all of these amazing potentials and what that will do to the next generation of CPAs coming up, and how it will enable so much more beneficial advisory and timely advisory in a way that I do believe will have mass impact on economics moving forward.
Yeah.
It's
without
rose-colored glasses maybe, but you know.
You got to put it out into the world, right? This is the future that we want.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about it and strive for it.
Yeah, but
figure out how to do it with less water.
But I gotta caveat that one and I went to grab the article. So I just read this article that talked about how AI advice made people 3 times less accurate but twice as confident. And the highlight is willingness to say I don't know collapsed from 44% to 3% when AI was made available.
Ugh.
And
I think that's a training gap though, because let's look at generational understanding of media literacy, right? If you look at and go down the ranks of different generations, there is a large gap in the ability to decipher what's real and what's not, and how that implicates. So I do think that a lot of that's a training gap, and also an understanding gap, because if you believe everything that you read on AI, it's okay, just go to Reddit and get all your information then. Let's just ask the Reddit bro ecosystem. But
And we went through that with Google, right? That was the thing that we didn't get right with Google and the internet, was just that training. Yeah, I mean, the 3 of us knew it. We've said it a million times. Just because it's on Google or the internet doesn't mean it's true, and you should not accept everything. But this is just an extension of that, human desire to get the easy answer and accept it.
But it's also an interface problem, right? The way that the standard LLMs are interfacing is it is a sycophantic answering service for you of the broad-based knowledge of the internet. And so as these tools get developed specifically for our industry, we'll build in filters that remove some of those issues. I don't think we're technologically capable of removing all of the issues, but that's the education side, is understanding where hallucinations could be potentially, in your answers and why, and being able to sort through and understand them and what the safeguards, what the process is, right? How you do that effectively. It's the same, how do you review a first year staff's work, right? How do you review an AI's work, and what tools, how are they programmed so that you can at least understand what the review level should be on each of them, and what are the built-in, safeguards in the industry specific tools that you're utilizing, and how so yes, and that is broad-based where we're at today. Absolutely terrifying, Donny. And I think that's part of that knowledge gap that I was feeling at the conferences, is that people there's all these people oh, it's great, everything, I know everything and I can do all this stuff. And then there's part of the industry that's I won't touch it because it's terrifying. And then there's me, who's sitting there in the middle, oh, well, you're wrong because you're doing all this stuff and not reviewing it properly. And also you don't understand the implications of where all of this data is going and how it's being used, even though you think it's safe, but it's not really because a salesperson told you that. But okay, let's not backtrack on that. And also this is slightly unethical. And here's all the empathy reasons you're missing this. And then on the other side, I'm well, you need to do something. You can't just ignore it altogether and be hey, this is bad, right? So anyways, I think it's a really fascinating moment. And I love research like that because it supports that like feeling that I have where it's like we're sitting between ridiculous anticipation, excitement, and trepidation. And like, how do we merge those things in a meaningful way that gives us the foundational knowledge and layers and training and process to do this right and use it effectively in the best way?
Completely with you on that. I mean, this year, the past couple of years, I've been saying do not adopt fully yet, or don't train your people on AI. This year, I've actually been changing my tune, and in fact, I've started saying you need to, and I know this message needs to get out, especially to the older partners, which is you need to let your firm or your people do something. Because this is not a 3 to 5 year, can't wait for your retirement. This is a 1 to 2 year. You need to start looking primarily at what the vendors are rolling out compared to build your own. Because I still feel like there's this feeling like they got to build their own thing. And I'm like, you're probably not going to do that. Like most of you are not. But the vendors are finally coming out with stuff that looks actually useful. And you should start researching at least and understanding what's out there.
And that's the challenge, right? Because you go on LinkedIn and LinkedIn is full of, the top 1 to 2% of people who are jumping in and building their own. Like I've talked to so many firms and a lot of the customer research that I'm doing at Karbon, and there are firms who are like Claude has become their nerve center. Like they're connecting everything to it. It's becoming their nerve center for their firm. And there are going to be firms who are going to go down that path because they don't have the patience for the vendors to build it. They have that technical ability to understand the possibilities, and they want to have like the ability to run towards those possibilities. So yeah, you go on to like LinkedIn or potentially even Reddit. I don't go there, but and see firms talking about things that they are doing, and there becomes this like, oh, I should be doing that too, but I'm paralyzed because I don't understand any of these things. And I think you're absolutely right, Donnie, for the large majority of people out there, like the vendors are going to start putting tools in your hands that should enable better trust if you trust the vendor and have had those conversations, and like give you real capabilities that aren't just like kind of like LinkedIn posts that look like it's super powerful, but it only worked one time out of 50 attempts.
But hearing you talk about Claude, and I assume that's Claude Cowork. The thing that really worries me about that is that people are not looking at the security issues there, because it is operating under the credentials of whoever is logged into it. And it's not traceable. You can't tell what it's doing. It's not like there's a log or something of it. And so I'm like, this is a data breach or some other type of exfiltration waiting to happen. Because I see a lot of the small firms trying it out, and I see some of the influencers telling firms that they should be doing it. But look at the large firms that have the resources and have the right cyber people that are looking at this. None of them are actually doing it to that extent. That should be a sign. I mean, large firms want to get ahead and they have the right people to get ahead on some of this stuff, and it's not happening.
Yep. And also, we are in a capitalistic society. So, like Anthropic and OpenAI, there's every reason for them to tell you it's 100% safe, even if they don't understand that themselves. And that's like the biggest gap that I'm seeing when I talk to like people that are actual AI experts and people that are like, accounting industry people. The biggest gap is when you're talking to really technical people, it's like, well, let's like get down to understand the fundamentals of the information flow and why they can't actually tell you that this is perfectly safe, right? And when you're talking to accounting industry people, they're like, well, the sales guy said it's not being used for training data, so that makes it safe, right? And it's like, well, no, it doesn't. You need to foundationally understand that, and also the implications of our profession, and what that looks like. And like, I look at all of these things, and I think very similarly to you, Donnie, where it's like, this is a foreign individual coming in, right? And how do you ensure security in those cases, and what are the safeguards that you have to do? And so one of the things, like, I bet on this, right, when I was building TaxFigure, and we literally built a privacy vault. Like, we built a system that removes all personally identifiable information, puts a firewall in between the databases for that, and any information that goes into an LLM has none of that and will never. Um, And like, people
Nice.
keep asking me, why'd you build that? Like, I'm just putting all my information into Claude. And I'm like, because that's dumb. And I would like to build a tool
Exactly.
that's not dumb. But of course, I can't say that without creating lots of people arguing with me about things that they don't actually foundationally understand, which is why I come back to it is a knowledge gap, a training gap. It is a moment of, we have so much going on. And like, how do people balance that? Like, how do you learn all this at the same time where you're actually doing the work still, right? It's a very, very
Very
difficult
difficult.
spot for most firms to be in right now. And I have a lot of empathy for that. And so I think what I love about both of you guys, is that we're all out here trying really hard to educate and find ways to influence for the safety and the ethics and the betterment of our profession in a really meaningful way. So thank you guys for doing that work.
Oh, you too. I mean, that's where I feel like we need to be that voice of reason, because there's so many out there that are just like, do this, do this, do this. Don't worry about, like, there's not even a don't worry, because they're like, it's just safe. It's not even a don't
Well, what
worry.
does safe mean, right? Like, it's safe. What does safe mean? What does that
Uh-huh.
really mean?
Yeah,
I don't think that's clear to anybody. It's
right.
safe.
Yes. And I want people to do this. I really, really do. Like, I think it's so
Oh
cool.
yeah.
And I have so many exciting ideas for what this technology can do, and what it's capable of today, and what'll be possible tomorrow, because everything changes so quickly. And also, like, I mean, I wouldn't just put my like file cabinet out on the street corner, let anyone rummage through it. Like, that's really not safe, in my opinion. But like, I live in a really safe neighborhood, so it's probably fine, right?
That's a fun analogy. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Hey, it's wild times. I mean, this is the moment we're at, where there's a lot of there's so many unknowns, and a lot of excitement around opportunities. And there's going to be incidents. There's going to be lessons learned. There's going to be bumps and bruises along the way that, we just have to go through as humans. That's the human experience, right? Like, that's how we learn.
Yep.
Yeah, but from my vantage point, I couldn't be more excited about this moment that we're in. Just seeing, I feel like the technology, or the opportunity of technology has finally caught up to what I've imagined for so many years. Like, one day we will have this
I
this
know.
this tool, right? And it's like, it's finally, like, we're so close to that, like, being a reality. It's just
We
it's
are.
pretty badass. Yeah.
For sure.
Right.
And
So,
it also gives me like so much hope for humans as well, like just in seeing how people are reacting. And, anyways, my biggest takeaway as we close out this whole amazing conversation of the conference season is that everybody is in the same boat as you are. We're all trying to figure it out and understand it and do the right thing and make sure that we're taking care of our clients in a really ethical and secure way.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, without a doubt. That is definitely the big takeaway from all of these, like, conferences coming together. Everybody's asking the same questions. Everybody's feeling the same anxiety, the same pressure, the same fear, the same level of paralysis of moving forward. Like, it's you are not alone, and the couple of people that you hear doing, like, these amazing things it's only a couple. It's a very, very small, percentage. Everybody else is just trying to figure out how to take the next steps in a way that is within their scope of risk tolerance for their firm's data, their clients' data, their employees' data.
Well, so as we transition really quick, what do you think about the second half of the year? What do you think we're gonna see?
Think fall conference season will be a continuation of this conversation. I also think that we'll see more come out around the sustainability of AI and what that looks like. I think the credit economies are
Mm,
changing rapidly and will change the dynamics from a financial perspective on the usability. I think the vendors that are integrating on top of old code will come out with like some interesting, hopefully useful, more useful than they have been adaptations and uses for AI. And then I think we'll see a whole new crop of AI native companies that are coming to the table. But I also think that there's a lot around pricing model that's going to change in those vendors to be able to sustain through this. And there's a lot that people aren't thinking about around how to efficiently utilize LLMs. And I say that because like quick moment of edification. You can have a big model like Fable 5, which is very expensive, takes a lot of resources. You can have a tiny model, and there's some open source small LLMs that are very usable for many of the day to day tasks that we have. And I think that we'll see vendors start maximizing the use of those LLMs and where they're hosted, how they're securely created. Anyways, I could go on for probably another hour about all my predictions for the next 6 months. So I'll cut it off there. But I do think we'll continue this conversation around how it's evolving and what people are doing to make sure that we can use it safely, securely, ethically, and with a conservation mindset.
I'm with you on all of that, and because I also am predicting that the private LLM is the direct same way we went private cloud. It's going to be private LLM that kind of goes towards that, which are the smaller models, which you have more control over, which becomes less of a black box when set up properly, whether it's internally or by a vendor. So I would agree with that. The biggest thing I'm worried about that you talked about is that cost, because I really feel like we're heading towards the AI bubble popping soon. And that it's that cost of those tokens and the removal of or the true cost of tokens, maybe let's say that, without the
Yeah,
cost shifting,
with the
because you see a lot of
subsidies.
these
Yeah.
big vendors, yes, doing that. So that's what I'm
Mhm.
worried about. And then with the fight against the data centers coming into people's, now that's going to become scarce resource, which then is going to increase the cost of compute, which is going to increase the cost of the tokens.
Right. And we're already seeing an increase in the cost of hardware. So
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
all of
Yeah.
this is going to change the dynamics for sure. And we've seen this model many, many times in technology, right? Where we underprice and subsidize to get market share and get people hooked, right? And build it into their workflows and all of that. And then prices go up very quickly without transparency. So
I
I
mean,
will always advocate for transparent pricing models.
It goes all the way back to the Great Depression, right? The major investment in the railroads,
Yep.
overinvestment in the railroads, and that create one day there's a reckoning of that capital investment that needs to happen. So I don't know. I don't feel like the next 6 months is that we're going to get much clarity on that type of stuff. I think there like we just saw. I mean, Anthropic had the plan to not subsidize Fable 5 as part of the licensing, and that collapsed because OpenAI has introduced models that are comparable quality, and then the open source stuff is happening. So I think we're still the next 6 months. There's still going to be a lot of unknown as to how those things are going to happen, and I think probably the best possible outcome of the next 6 months is we're going to see a lot more of the vendor built AI, which hopefully will have like real meaningful impact for 2027 for a lot of these firms. So we're going to see adoption really kick up because of those capabilities. But I don't know. The battle in just the foundation models and open source, I think it's still going to be a more of the same for the next 6 months.
I'm feeling the same, which is my advice to firms for this second half of the year has been really come back and refigure out what are the core business problems. Because that to me needs to be the foundation. What are the business problem you're trying to solve? And then which tech is the right tech to help solve? And sometimes it's not a tech problem.
I just heard a story on a podcast I was listening to about somebody giving an example of a company. This is not accounting, but a company who had outsourced virtual assistants, like overseas VAs, spending $11,000 to $15,000 a month on this group of VAs doing good work, but it's just a lot of human labor, and they spent somewhere in the ballpark of $300,000 trying to implement an agentic solution to replace the things this virtual assistant group was doing. So they effectively spent, 3 to 5 years worth of human labor costs trying to build an imperfect agentic solution to replace that. And it wasn't even the bottleneck in the business. Like, it was working fine. It just seemed like low-level skills that were primed for using AI. So they figured they'd invest to try to replace it. And to your point, look for the bottlenecks in your business and solve those things. Don't just solve the other things because it's possible. Solve the things that are truly holding back your business. And if the technology isn't there yet, then maybe you have to look beyond technology to solve those things.
Wise words that maybe we'll end with.
Don't end with my wise words.
Questionable life choices.
Well, the scene is comedy, so we should end on a comedy end.
That is true. Well, thank you guys for the riveting conversation.
Thank you.
It's nice to be back together again. I look forward to the next one.
Absolutely.
Amen.
See all of you out
See you
there
guys
as well.
later.
Bye.
Be good.
The Center for Accounting Transformation provides business professionals with a network for utilizing innovations that are ready for adoption, the training and resources necessary to apply those innovations, and an opportunity to engage the talent and community needed to further the pursuit of innovative accounting practices that drive responsible and mindful business performance. Find out more at our website, www.improvetheworld.net. And if you're interested in sharing your own transformation stories, please contact us there.